my pleasure to be here.
I always love when we get to talk a little bit about the importance of people in this AI world these days. Where are you joining us from today?
I live about an hour away from Toronto in Canada.
Oh, I hear it's getting warm there, even in the winters. We're all getting a hotter earth these days.
Yes, well, though this
Uh,
winter was pretty crazy. It was one of the strongest winters we had in years.
oh,
So,
you had some good snow.
oh
Okay,
yeah, it
that's
was pretty
great.
loud.
I missed my ski season this year. I've got to try again this next winter.
For
Well, I really
sure.
appreciate you joining us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about ISU, what brought you to found that organization, kind of what it focuses on, and maybe some of, I'm assuming some passions that are part of why you've done that.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I graduated as a computer scientist back in 1994, 95. I tried to run my own consulting gig back then, thinking I could write programs for people, but it was just a junior developer. So I ended up selling computers to make ends meet. So after 2 years of almost failing, I was able to sell that business. Praise the Lord for that. And I got my first job as a computer programmer. But I had that taste of entrepreneurship, you know. Little did I know that about 6 months into my first full-time job, somebody called me, wanted to write a point of sale system for them. So I asked my boss and they approved it with HR. So I was actually having my own business at night. And that gig lasted for about 8 years. So it kept growing and growing and growing. And while that was happening in my corporate jobs, I kept growing too. Until there was a point in time in 2005 when I'm like, I think this part-time gig could become into something full-time. So I asked my wife again, because the first time my wife supported me for 2 years while I was losing money. So I asked my wife again, are you willing to, to pay the bills while I try to become an entrepreneur again? So she said, let's do it, but you have 5 years to hire me to your company, or you go get another job, right? So that's we jump into 2005. The main reasons why I started ISU Corp. So it's a software development company and software support services. So, for example, if you have a legacy website, and let's say you have a developer, two developers, and either want to retire or you feel too risky by having all your knowledge in one guy, you can hire us as a team. So we will assign you a team with at least 4 or 5 people know your system, so you're always protected. So that's one of line of businesses. The other one is creating those software products for our clients. So a few reasons why I started. Number one, I had that entrepreneurial bug in me. That was the most important one. But number two, I was commuting to Toronto, so I live about an hour away without traffic. So I was commuting to Toronto for 10 years because as I was growing in the corporate world, most of the jobs were in Toronto. I live in a small town called Kitchener-Waterloo. It's not so small anymore, but back then it was about 100,000 people. Now it's about 300,000 people. So that got tiring. And also being there for 10 hours and then having a part-time gig after that, it got tiring at the end. So I thought, as a developer, I didn't need to be at the office. Most of the times, I could do all that work from home, even back in 2004, 2005. So my hypothesis was, I bet I can build a software development company where my developers can be wherever they want in the world. So I started my business in 2005, and the first 2 years, they were really very hard because people would not trust me. They wanted to see the developers at their office. So at the beginning, I was there with my people at the office working for big companies like Manulife, Bell Canada, big names like that, because that's where I came from that corporate world. But then little by little, I was starting attracting smaller clients, like, mid-sized companies, and they were a little more lenient of where my developers were. And since then, now the company is 100% remote. We've been in business for 21 years. Praise the Lord. Thanks to the Lord for that. And we keep adding value, and we keep morphing. We keep changing as the times change.
I know we talked a little. My company is 20 years old, so I'm only a year behind you on that. And I know that when I started out, it was also challenging, worrying. Where's the next client? How are you going to grow and sustain? Are there any lessons you took away that if someone else was starting a business today, you might? And I know today's business world is also shifting in different ways, but is there anything you'd recommend they keep in mind as they try to be an entrepreneur today?
Yeah, the biggest mistake I made was what got me into my first 5 years safe also trapped me for another 10, 15 years. And this is being too frugal or trying to do everything yourself. So the first business that I founded, I got a loan from the government for $30,000 backed by a bank. Sorry, a bank loan backed by the government. $30,000 in 1995 is like at least $100,000 now. And in those 2 years, I spent that money plus another $10,000 on my credit card, and I had to repay that back with my full-time job. When it was a horrible mistake. Thank God I actually, when I sold the business, I paid some of that off too. So because I had that experience, when I started my business again in 2005, I said, I'm going to bootstrap this, zero debt. Everything is going to be sweat equity. So I started doing everything myself. And then when I started growing, I hired one developer, then I hired the second developer, but I kept doing the sales myself, the marketing myself. I kept doing everything myself. And for the first 5 years, I developed a nice cushion on the corporate bank account because I wasn't paying myself. I was trying to be as frugal as possible. And that was fine until I realized that I got addicted to working, because when you're doing most of the stuff yourself, I was the main architect on every project. So I will market to the clients. I will sell the project, and then I will be the main architect of the project or the main project manager in the project. So problems. My customers got addicted to seeing me, not my people, number one. So how can you grow if you are the only one working, right? Number two, I was overworking myself, working 13, 14 hours a day. And when you do it for long enough, you get used to it and you get addicted to working. And so that's a trap, because after 5 years, I should start hiring people to replace me, better people at marketing, better people at sales, better people at architecture and development. And my company was growing. Like, I already had 20 people. And so it was working, but I was still thinking that I was the only guy that could do it. So ego sets in, plus that scarcity mentality where if I hire people, I'm going to go bankrupt. And that delayed my progress for many, many, many years until 2019. 2019, imagine that. When I already was around 45 people, where I realized, if I want to retire, I gotta get some of these responsibilities back to other people. So in 2019, I joined a business group, and they actually, my mentor there taught me how to run a self-managed business, and that's what I have now. It comes with a price, because my profit margins are less than half as they used to be, but I don't do anything in the company anymore. I just set the direction, and I oversee the financials. And now I have a president, I have a formal sales team, a formal marketing team. And now the company has the chance to grow because I am not the one doing everything, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. So it sounds like you took on more like a chairman role, removing yourself from the day-to-day. That makes sense. And that had to be really difficult, because at some level, like you said, it's your blood, sweat, and tears you'd put into building this. Now to be able to step away, was it a really hard psychological shift to be able to let go?
It was one of the hardest things I had to do. And, as you know, I'm a man of faith. I am a born-again Christian, lover of the Lord Jesus Christ. So throughout this process, I had to rely on him, because especially 2022, 2023, when I was letting go, it was hard. I will still try to get in, fix things myself. I will see mistakes that I could fix right away. I will try to pull in leads or clients still, until, it's funny, because I went to a service, and a prophet was in this service in 2023, late, like in October 2023. And after preaching, he came right to me and he says, the Lord says you are retired already. You are retired. So God had to send somebody to tell me I am retired, for me not to mess up with the team and everybody else, right?
Yes, that's great. Well, and that's always an interesting piece. You're a man of faith, entrepreneur. You found the right pivot to step away and take this great business you've built and learn to let go. And then you've also, in this time of AI, written a book about the importance of it as a tool. Can you talk a little bit about the book and what brought you to publish that?
Yeah, it's incredible. We are actually about to start writing a second edition of that book. As you know, everything gets so obsolete so fast, right? But the main concepts are there. I have been involved with AI concepts since the late 90s. In the early 2000s, we started building something called data warehousing. Remember those days?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a primitive version of AI, right? Like doing machine decision making that will actually help executives run their business better. And everything started evolving and evolving and evolving. But I was very aware that of the AI concepts and the neural network concepts that those were created in the 60s.
Yeah.
And if you're a technologist, you know that we are under an exponential law. And the problem with exponential law is that it looks linear for the first 10, 15 years until it hits the exponential cycle, and then it goes hockey stick up. So in 2023, I came to realize that we were about to enter the exponential cycle up. I mean, ChatGPT was still primitive, but it was beginning to show some good stuff. Like on my book, I have at least 5 different companies back then. Now they are monsters now. That back then they were still already doing some things that you were like, okay, this is hitting exponential. So in my book on 2023, I predicted that my own developers will be writing 40% of their code with AI. And that's already happened. And we're hitting 50%. I know we're going to hit 50% this year, which means we're going to be obsolete by 2030 if it keeps growing in this rate. So the book is called AI or Die, and it's to alert my clients, to alert potential clients, and to alert anybody that runs a business that if they don't get involved into AI as a strategy in their main business, eventually they're going to die as a company because the competition is doing it, and AI is creating so many competitive advantages that if you don't use it, you're going to die.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, I think it's been interesting because I think it's hard. There's so much noise, I'll call it, on like LinkedIn, for example. Every post, the first 2 letters is AI, it feels like. And I think what's hard is as we live in this world, and we've been taking an approach of trying to make sure absolutely AI is important. It's just a tool. So let's make sure we're being smart with the money we're investing so we get benefit and have a plan, right? Just don't throw things out there. And I feel like we've been seeing 3 major areas come out of this space. One is sort of the LLM, where it can superpower your CFO, your marketing people, drive content or insights, and that's a direct interaction. But a second piece is custom developed agents and building things that do stuff. And the third we're seeing is we're back to packages, right? So someone will have a specialized tool like Go High Level for CRM, right? AI first. It gives you all of this functionality right out of the box, and it's built on top of a Claude or a ChatGPT. As you look across those pieces, where do you feel like today is the highest value? And do you think there's any other category I missed?
No, I think you hit them all for sure. For me, the highest value is building your AI agents and started deploying them to do whatever it is that you want to do. And that's, AI agents, they started getting popular last year, and they're getting more and more and more efficient. And so just so for the audience, what is an AI agent? Well, imagine it's like a worker. It's like a person that is doing a job for you, but it has the capability of create their own decisions based on parameters that you have set in place. It's scary, and it's fascinating at the same time, because agents is what's replacing people, and agents is what's going to replace more and more people in the future. Because they learn, right? It's a self-learning mechanism. So it's not, you can not only custom build it to solve any problems, but at the same time, that thinking actually grow itself to expand to other problems as it encounters it, right?
And how are you seeing it change when you're doing custom development? So set aside the first piece of business where you're picking up existing product and managing it for clients. But that second part where you're deploying new technology, is it primarily just part of the development cycle, or are you beginning to build AI first products for your clients?
So we started with AI as an aid, or for sure it's an aid still. For example, you want to write an object to do X, Y, and Z, you don't write it anymore. You tell AI to write it for you, and you just give it the parameters, right? But now it's evolving because we just ran our experiment with some of our senior developers back in the spring, and they took this AI agent, and the AI agent had the capacity of writing code as a junior developer by itself. But now it's to the point where we are teaching it so that it's becoming an intermediate developer. Meaning I don't tell it a specific task. I tell him, these are the parameters, these are the business requirements, go write this code for me. And it's becoming an intermediate developer. That's scary, because if you're in computer science, becoming a developer is not easy. It requires at least 4 years of education plus another 3-4 years of training at the job training. To give an idea, my niece, she graduated from marketing and computer science in Atlanta last December. She has 2 friends that only did computer science, and they're still looking for a job, because an AI agent out of the box has the capabilities of a junior developer. So if you train it, it actually becomes proficient, right?
Absolutely. So I think it's the challenge, right? So for a business owner or business leader, AI agents powerful, and honestly not always cheaper though. Might be very effective, but you've still got token costs and maintenance and hardware and or hosting. There's other aspects of it. So there's still some argument about which one's less expensive. But there's no PTO, there's no benefits, there's no complaining about HR. So there's all these other soft costs that kind of drop off that I think a lot of leaders. Yeah, I think a lot of leaders are very happy to get rid of those soft costs and take the hard cost of an agent. But what's your advice for this upcoming generation then? You've got a daughter, I've got a daughter. Mine's a little behind yours, but it's coming. Is it as simple as get AI native and we're going to find our way through, or do you think there's a more complicated answer?
I think it's a more complicated answer. As you know, I'm an eternal optimist. But in this revolution, this is the last revolution we're seeing. We had the agricultural revolution where we started creating cities because we could concentrate energy, which is food, right? Energy within one place without having to be nomads and walking everywhere, hunting and gathering. Then we had the industrial revolution that disrupted the agricultural revolution with machinery. Then we have the information age, right? That disrupted the industrial revolution with robotics and information systems, which is what we had all these years until we got into the AI revolution, right? Industrial revolution with AI. Every other revolution created more jobs in the new industry than the jobs it replaced before. But in this one, it's not happening yet. It's disrupting jobs, it's eliminating jobs, but it's not creating new jobs because you have these agents that are smart and they can actually learn by themselves. So I think if I were an 18, 19-year-old kid looking for a career, I will make sure that my career will be always a human interfacing, that it will require an interaction with a human being. And number 2, I will get an expert on how to use AI agents to my advantage, right? I believe in the future, when you go to your interview, you're going to come with your agents and says, I have an agent to do this and that and that and that, and this is part of my qualifications, right?
Yes. And I think that's a really good example because that level where the agents, which today we just typically use the LLMs, right? The way we interact with them, but with natural language is something that we're on a pivot point, right? We're getting to a spot where people are coming to understand this is part of the future. We're still seeing a lot of resistance within society. I know I'll sit down with family and I'll bring up AI, and half of the people at the table very emotionally reject the premise. Fortunately for them, they're all retired, so they don't have to necessarily adapt. But all the other half of the table, usually folks still in the working world or children, get it and understand the importance and everything you just said. Let's adapt and make them part of our world.
Like, for example, a classical career that would be very hard to disrupt is political science, right? If you want to get into politics, you want to set law, you want to fight for your people. That's going to be very hard to be replaced with AI, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Well, there's going to be some piece of it. We're doing work in the healthcare space, and we're seeing everything from robotics to AI come in to displace certain pieces of it. But what never changes is there was already loneliness as an epidemic, at least here in the United States, for senior living. And the only way to address that really effectively is another human. Mm-hmm. And so as we can free up people to focus on that human interaction like you're describing, I think we really begin to empower what we really hunger for, right? We hunger for that human connection and that relationship. I know there's a school, I think it's in New York, where they've moved to, starting in kindergarten, I think they've gone to like 6th grade, it's an AI first school. And to your point about the human relationship, they only do 2 hours of AI tutoring, right? So every student moves at their own pace, and there's an adult in the room, but they don't call them a teacher anymore. They're a facilitator, right? So we're already starting to see this shift that their job isn't to teach the children. Their job is to help the children every day and then take them out into the woods for a hike or horseback riding or go to the park and see some ducks. But it's like, go live some life, and they facilitate that too. Would you say that's kind of what you see too? Is the future is the human interaction becomes the focus for the humans?
Yeah, for sure. And also, as the example you placed, there is a human there that is going to be necessary, even though you have an AI with you, right? For supervision. Another factor that I wanted to mention also is that big tech company that makes it usually sets itself as a freemium or as a very low cost of entry at the beginning, and they know they're going to lose money for a number of years until the market adopts the technology, and then they can start hacking up the prices. Netflix is a great example of that, for example, right? I don't know. This is one of the things that could be to our advantage to try to delay this a little bit. I don't know if you noticed, but I believe Amazon wasted, yeah, I don't know the number, but hundreds of millions of dollars in 1 month because they went too much into cloud, right? Because that's with tokens, and they got scared. This is now that is still, they are losing money on the delivery of this tool. The gigafactories, the energy that it requires to deliver the AI services, that is very, very expensive. And we're not seeing that right now. A $20 a month subscription for ChatGPT, they are not making any money, right? So I don't think that we have realized what is the real cost of running an agent. And it might be that it will be close to having a flesh and, and flesh and bone person, one body there with you. It might be,
Yeah, comparable, exactly. That's one of the things. The numbers I've seen is the $20 a month fee that people were paying for ChatGPT, for example, was costing OpenAI more like $1,700 or $1,800 a month. And so, to your point, significant disparity there between the revenue and the cost. And I think you're right as well. We're starting to see that shift, right? Already, Anthropic's beginning to charge more for API access. They're doing more with charging and limiting token access for the per seat. So we're seeing that shift begin. But I think, to your point, there's still a ways to go. They're not still fully burdening the consumer, for sure. And even enterprise customers, I don't think they're fully burdened yet.
What worries me is if you look at the US economy, it's not in a recession just because of the AI investment. But if you look at the AI investment, they are actually selling money to each other. So there's big 5 tech companies, and they buy the processors from this guy, and this guy buys this, and that guy buys that, and they are just giving it's circular money. Yeah. And it's trillions and trillions of dollars of borrowed money building all this infrastructure, and the people don't have no idea how much it's going to cost to pay for that. So I believe there is an AI tech bubble that is forming. By the way, most industrial revolutions come with a bubble first. The bubble comes, it's amazing. Everybody wants to make money with it, and then the bubble bursts. Most people go bankrupt, and then the real players stay. That's where Amazon came out, right? That's where you have the Amazons, the Microsoft of the world, the Googles of the world, the survivors of the dot-com crash, right? So I believe we still have to wait for that crash, and on that crash, many, many players will be washed out, right?
Yeah, no, completely agree. Well, David, I really look forward to hearing about the next version of the book and exploring a little more of how important AI is for all of us. Was there anything else you wanted to share with the audience today?
No, not really. I think one more thing that I wanted to say, Mark, is that there is nothing new under the sun. If you read the book of Ecclesiastes, it says that the Lord likes to work in cycles throughout humanity's history. So I started saying that we started with agriculture, right? And I believe we're going to start going back to agriculture. We're going to go through the whole cycle again, because if this becomes that destructive, if it becomes as destructive as people think it could become, like Elon Musk keeps advising this since 2015, that this could be the end of humanity. I don't think it's going to be the end of humanity, but it will push people back to agriculture. Yeah. If you have a 5-year degree and $100,000 in debt and you cannot find a job, how are you going to feed yourself?
Yeah.
So first, kids will come back with their parents because they cannot afford to live by themselves. And from there, they're going to have to get a plot of land and start farming for themselves, homesteading. And we go back to the beginning,
Exactly. Which at some level comes back to what we're seeing as an opportunity in senior living. If you can free people up to focus on the people relationship, this would be forced as opposed to freed up. But bringing those families back together, and I know that's something that happens at least here in the United States a lot, is children tend to go off to college and then go off somewhere else to start their families away from the nucleus. And it's a lost relationship, I think, that's been deteriorated. So maybe this is, whether we want it or not, maybe there's a step here that will bring the culture back together again. That's a great insight, David. Thank you.
And yeah, for sure. And it's happening already where my son lives. It's a community where the houses were built in the 70s. And we're seeing, he's seeing 35, 40-year-old people going back to live with their parents because they cannot afford their own house anymore.
Yeah.
So it's happening already.
Absolutely. And I think that's been the shift. Here in the States, we were complaining because a lot of 20 and 30-year-olds were coming home and the parents were letting them and they didn't have to, right? That was different. They didn't want to work. But now finding the jobs is harder. And absolutely, that entry-level worker is bumping up against these challenges for sure. It's a real challenge.
So the world is changing, but we have to keep the faith.
Absolutely. Keep the faith and stay positive. I love your optimism. Absolutely, David. Well, thank you for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a beautiful rest of the day.
You too.
It is